Welcome to HFY Stories. Please subscribe to the channel. Your one click means the world to me. The ceiling came down in fist-sized chunks, and Ambassador Vexter of the Keithrani Compact would remember, years later, that his first thought was not fear but arithmetic. How many more direct hits before the roof gave out entirely, and how strange it was that he'd learned to calculate that number from a human. He would tell this story many times afterward, at closed sessions and quiet dinners, and he never told it the same way twice. But he always started here, smoke threading through red emergency light, an alarm shrieking 2 floors down, and a woman in a plain security uniform checking her wrist display like she was timing an egg. 6 hours earlier, none of it had seemed possible. The council chamber had been cold and bright then. 3 delegations arranged around the obsidian table like pieces on a board neither side agreed how to play. Vexter's stalks had ached with the effort of holding still while the human ambassador, Marcus Vale, a man who smiled the way other species bared teeth, dismantled a century of diplomatic protocol with a single sentence about crayons and quantum mechanics. "You have insulted this council's economic foundations," Vexter had said, low and furious. "I described them accurately," Vale replied. "There's a difference, though I understand the distinction might be new to you." It was Zithkar who moved first, mandibles snapping the air, demanding arrest. Glee 9, the ambassador from the Molt Assembly, rippled through 3 shades of outrage before agreeing. Vexter, God help him, had agreed too, 3 votes. He hadn't thought to ask how many delegations were actually in the building. He noticed the guard then, really noticed her, the way you notice a knife only once it's already moving. She stood by the door doing nothing at all, which should have told him something. "You should know," Vexter said, drawing himself up, "that 47 of our finest surround this chamber." 46, the guard said. It was the first thing she'd said all session. He asked her to repeat it because his translator surely had failed. She obliged, patient as a tutor. One of his men, she explained, had fallen asleep at the eastern post roughly 9 minutes ago. Nothing sinister, she assured him, just poor training and worse discipline. Then she kept talking, and each sentence took something else away from him. The relief rotation running 3 hours late, the 47-second blind spot in the scanning grid, the encryption on their command channel that she compared, not unkindly, to a child's toy. "You're inventing this," Zithkar managed. "Guard post 7's been empty since I started counting," she said. "Want me to keep going?" Vexter had felt something in his chest go very still and very cold. It was not fear of violence. It was the particular vertigo of watching a wall you'd trusted your whole life turn out to be painted on. The building groaned somewhere beneath them, a low structural complaint, nothing yet to worry about, though Vexter would later understand it as the first note of everything still to come. "Even if all of this is true," Glee 9 said, gathering himself, "you are one creature. We have soldiers." "I have information," the guard, Knox, Vale called her, Sergeant Knox said, and drew out a data slate as casually as another person might check the time. She read from it without hurry, rotation schedules, bunker coordinates, the combination to Vexter's own private safe, his security chief's anniversary. He told himself each item was a coincidence, a lucky guess, right up until the moment she stopped guessing. "There's a shipment ledger under your personal seal," she said. Cargo manifests routed through 3 shell registries and 1 very careless courier. The Sigma cartel doesn't usually bill in compact currency, but yours did. Twice. The room went silent in a way Vexter had never experienced before or since, not the silence of people choosing not to speak, but the silence of people who have discovered there is nothing left worth saying. He felt the eyes of his own delegation on him, and for the first time in decades, he had no answer ready. "That ledger doesn't exist," he said, and even he could hear how little weight the words carried. "It exists," Knox said. "It's just no longer only yours." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Your network security was built by someone who thought a password should be memorable. I found it memorable too. That was the moment. Vexter would say this every time he told the story, the one detail he never varied. When he understood that whatever was about to happen to his world, he had brought it on himself the instant he decided a human's honesty was worth more punishment than his own dishonesty. The first explosion came from somewhere below the floor, and the lights failed a heartbeat after. Emergency lamps flickered up in a dull red that made everyone in the room look already burned. Which brought him back to where he'd started, rubble dust in his throat, alarms overlapping like a chorus with no melody, and Sergeant Knox reading her wrist display in the wreckage red dark, as though she were waiting for a kettle. "Your munitions depot," she said, almost apologetic. "I may have underestimated the construction quality." "You're destroying us," Vexter said, and heard how thin his own voice had become. "I'm negotiating," she said. "Destroying comes later if it has to." Vale, seated through all of it with the unbothered posture of a man at a garden party, finally leaned forward. "Counselors, I believe we were discussing my release, and the embargo, and several colonies currently going without medicine because of a policy none of you can even fully explain to me." "There are procedures," Zithkar started, and a support beam gave way somewhere above them, dropping a curtain of plaster between his words and any hope of finishing the sentence. 4 minutes, Knox offered, checking her slate, "before this room stops being structurally polite." Vexter felt the vote collapse the way the ceiling had, not a decision so much as a surrender to gravity. The embargo suspended. Then, at Vale's flat correction, lifted, permanently. Reparations agreed to.